Welcome. In this short video we're going to review the most basic features of UML use case diagrams. You can think of a UML use case diagram as giving you a high-level summary of the requirements of a system. It doesn't replace other requirements documentation, but you might think of it as being a kind of index into whatever other documentation you have. It does two main tasks. It identifies the boundary of the system, so it lets you clarify what are the things that you control and that you'll have to design in the course of your software development, and what are the things that you don't control but may need to find out about. So that's its first main task. And the other main task of UML use case diagram is to give you a sort of high-level classification of the functionality of the system into sort of discrete coherent tasks, which we call use cases. So we're going to illustrate this using a variant of the library system that you'll find in using UML if you're using that book. You're designing a library management system, and the main category of users of your system are going to be library members. Okay, so you don't design the library member, you just investigate it, and so we represent library members as an actor on our diagram. Actors in UML use case diagrams are shown as stick figures like this, and they are named using noun phrases that are shown capitalized. We'll come back to that in a moment. And let's say that the first and most basic task that your system has to be able to support is the borrowing of a book. So that gives us our first use case. Borrow book. And a use case in a use case diagram is shown inside an ellipse, which, if you're doing whiteboard diagrams, can be very rough. And because the functionality of borrowing a book may involve the library member, there may be some library member who wishes to borrow a book and interacts with the system to do so, we connect those two using a solid line, which is an association. Okay. Now, this is our first correct, complete UML use case diagram. There's already a few things to say. So one is to say it's important to realize that the stick figure is not representing a particular individual library member. It's representing all the potential library members. And similarly, the use case borrow book is not representing just a particular path through the functionality. It's representing all the different ways that functionality could go. So there are different scenarios involved in this use case. This includes the scenario where the library member succeeds in borrowing the book, and it includes the scenario where the library member is told they can't borrow the book because they've got too many unpaid fines or whatever it is. That's all fine. This is just a high-level overview. Let's suppose that another task that our system has to be able to carry out is to reserve a book. And this is going to allow us to show another feature. So, very similarly, we will have a use case. Reserve book connected to library member and enclosed in an ellipse. But this one, let's suppose, is slightly different, because under some circumstances at least, it turns out that in order for our system to carry out the reserve book functionality, it needs to interact with some other external system, let's say the interlibrary loan system. How do we represent external systems on a use case diagram? Well, they're quite a lot like users, because you don't control the external systems, you just have to find out about how to interact with them successfully and incorporate that into your design, take it into account in your design. And for that reason, external systems are also represented on UML use case diagrams as actors. So in this case, this is the interlibrary loan system. And similarly, it's connected via a solid line, an association, with the relevant use case. Okay. Here it becomes really important to realize that we're talking here about all potential scenarios of the reserve book use case and all possible instances of the interlibrary loan system. In this case, there might only be one instance of the interlibrary loan system, and that's fine. But because of this fact that we're talking about all potential instances, it's just fine if some particular instance of reserved book doesn't involve the interlibrary loan system at all. Maybe in this particular case the library member wishes to reserve a book which is already on our shelf in the library, or will be when somebody returns it, and that's just fine. You can think of these associations as being potential interactions between actors in the system and the system, in particular with this particular functionality represented in that use case. And that's roughly all you need to know about use cases for this course. There is a lot more complex notation, which under some circumstances you might need to find out about, but not really for this course.